Welcome to this Sydney Writers' Festival panel discussion with the provocative and grammatically confusing title, No He Can't, ? It's a question mark about Barack Obama, about Obama's America, and about its role in the world. My name is Geoff Garrett. I'm the Chief Executive of the US Studies Centre at the University of Sydney, and it's my real pleasure to be here this morning with all of you to moderate a discussion that I'm sure is going to be fascinating. It's less than 2 years after people all around the world were swept up in Barack Obama's extraordinary and probably unprecedented "yes, we can" promise on the election trail to be next American president, affecting people on all sides of politics, people in the United States, people all around the world. But today, the session title for our panel reflects a new reality. So we've gone from the "yes, we can" promise of a Barack Obama presidential candidate to the reality of the Obama administration, in which people are whispering and sometimes shouting, no he can't, and other times questioning, perhaps he can't. Today we're going to discuss this topic not in the policy wonkish minutiae of what was in the US healthcare reform bill, what's going to be in the financial reform bill, maybe passed later this week, or how the troop surge in Afghanistan is going. Rather, this session is designed to be about the big picture on Obama, what his presidency has meant so far for Americans, Australians, and people around the world, and what his presidency might mean in the future for us all. It's clear that Barack Obama entered office both with unprecedented expectations and unprecedented challenges. In addition to being faced with the challenge of ending 2 long wars and fighting off the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression, Obama was also supposed to restore his country's standing, both among its own people and among people all around the world. After the in-your-face unilateralism of Bush foreign policy and the charge that President Bush aided, abetted, or ignored the gargantuan excesses of Wall Street to create the global financial crisis, today we have to ask the question, how is Obama doing in rising to the challenge? Rising politically in terms of his policy leadership and personally as president. I'm on the stage with 3 superb panelists who are very well equipped to rise to the challenge of analysing Obama. Anne Davies on my far right has just returned from a 3-year stint as Washington correspondent for The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald, where she offered insightful and minute-by-minute, I have to say, coverage of the 2008 presidential election. She served previously as the Sydney Morning Herald state political editor and urban affairs editor, exposing, among other things, links between property developers and local politics in New South Wales, obviously a topic of ongoing concern. Her work with Kate McClymont helped her win a Gold Walkley for her coverage of the previous salary cap scandal in sports affecting the Canterbury Bulldogs almost 10 years ago, I think it was. Christopher Hitchens to my left, and I'll quote from The Observer, is one of the most prolific as well as brilliant journalists of our time, and I was told to say he's also widely published, a polemicist and a frequent radio and TV commentator. I have to say whoever wrote this script believed in understatement. Christopher Hitchens is a contributing editor to Vanity Fair. He's a visiting professor at the New School in New York, and I think you have an affiliation with the Hoover Institution at Stanford and the Atlantic Monthly. His numerous books include the recent international bestseller, God is Not Great, not a very provocative title, and he's in Australia, among other things, talking about his latest book, Hitch 22, a memoir. Last but certainly not least, to my immediate right is Don Watson. Don Watson's American Journeys, a book about his time in the United States in the run-up to the Obama presidency, won the Age Nonfiction and Book of the Year awards in 2008. It also won the inaugural Indie Award for Nonfiction and the Walkley Award for Nonfiction. His earlier Recollections of a Bleeding Heart won the Age Book of the Year and Non-Fiction prizes, the Courier Mail Book of the Year, National Biography Award, Australian Literary Studies Book of the Year Award. His best-selling Death Sentence won the Australian Booksellers Association Book of the Year in 2003. So we have a very distinguished...
You didn't mention any of my prizes.
You didn't mention my affiliation.
How should I feel?
I think you should take that up with your publicist, because I'm only doing what I was told. And I'm sure you're not in a position to speak for yourself on any of these matters. So.
No, sir.
Without further ado, I'll try to take one giant step back here and put our panelists in the limelight. I can see that some of them are at least itching for that role. So let me start with just an overall reactions, a sort of quick reactions from the panel on this question of, has Obama, yes we can, turned into Obama, no he can't? And perhaps we might start with you on this question.
Well, I think that's a little bit of an unfair assessment that he can't. I actually think he's made two pretty big steps forward. One is the healthcare reforms, which measured against Australian standards are a little bit wimpy, but in the American context, I think they will make quite a big difference to the lives of the 47 million people who didn't have insurance, and also the people who found themselves unable to be insured because they had pre-existing conditions. And overnight, we've had the financial reforms come through. So, I think he's achieved two things that in 10 years' time people will see as pretty significant. Perhaps not the sort of things that capture the heart, perhaps not the things that inspire hope and give the great big vision that we saw in the election. But I think they'll be significant.
But that is the big point, isn't it, Christopher Hitchens, that back on the campaign trail, the winning and now we think plagiarised photograph poster was about hope. And it was change you can believe in, and a whole new generations of Americans involved in politics, and now they seem disenchanted again, and we have things like the Tea Party emerging. Anne's just documented the two big legislative achievements of Obama, but how do you think he's doing politically, living up to the promise or otherwise?
Well, just to scroll back to the starting point, during the campaign I wrote an attack on the slogan, yes we can, saying that it was one of the most infantile and vapid slogans that ever been. It sounded like desperate parents trying to teach potty training to recalcitrant, yes, we can. And I was very relieved to find in David Remnick's excellent new biography, which I recommend, of the president, that Obama always thought it was a silly slogan as well. That gave me a certain amount of comfort and reassurance, because the reason I voted for him, not just negatively in that I couldn't conceivably vote for McCain-Palin, but positively, was I thought he was a good writer. Language is my business, it's all I really care about. It's one of the very few things I can say I know anything about. The person revealed in his extremely well-written first volume, at any rate, is a very open-minded, very curious, self-critical, humorous individual. And I was very pleased to find he hadn't fallen for his own propaganda. I always think that's an excellent start. The problem with open-mindedness is it can become empty-mindedness or neutrality, and my principal interest is in foreign policy, especially in the war between civilization and its declared enemies. And I think it is probably not the case that the differences between the United States and Iran, for example, or rather the Islamic Republic of Iran, or North Korea, arise from cultural misunderstandings. I don't think that's true. I think it's a soft interpretation that won't and doesn't survive collision with the evidence. My impression is the president is a much tougher person on this than he looks, or than he's chosen to present himself as being. But have I already talked too much? Someone better tell me.
Well,
she was so admirably terse that I...
Don, so we had two different versions of Obama. Anne went, despite my protestations, with the policy wonk. Let's dig into the 1,000-page healthcare and finance bills and find all the good that Obama's done. Christopher came back with Obama as a literary cultural figure who may have a lot of steel inside those Miles Davis cool bones and clothes that he wears. Where do you stand on this perspective?
Well, I'm weirdly optimistic. I just read the Remnick biography too. And he does... I'm not optimistic by nature at all. And Obama's the first person to make me feel optimistic for a very long while.